do this all day. A bunch of a-holes. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Hello and welcome back to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today breaking down What If Episode 2 is Jack Seepersod. How are you?
Hello, I'm happy to be back on here again, talking What If once again.
Yeah, this has been a fun little series here. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm excited to chat about it because there's some good things that we just talked about off air. But also, there was an Eternals trailer today. I'm not sure if you got a chance to see that.
I've watched it once, but not closely. I feel like I need to watch it again and look more closely at it, I think.
Yeah, I watched it at like 7 a.m. before I went to work. It was it looks good though. It looks like this was a better trailer than the first trailer we got. So I'm feeling very good about Eternals. So we're not going to do a full in-depth thing of that, but so we're just going to talk what if this is episode 2. What if T'Challa became a Star-Lord? Directed by Bryan Andrews, written by Matthew Chauncey, and it originally released on August 18th on Disney Plus, and it ran for 32 minutes. The synopsis: the rough-and-tumble space pirates known as the Ravagers abduct T'Challa instead of Peter Quill. Kind of a very basic premise there. But what was your overall thoughts on episode 2?
Well, I harped on it once, or not harped on, but praised it in the first episode that we did of this. But the animation is just absolutely astounding. I love it so much. It feels like a perfect mix of like old and new stylings, and it's really awesome. And also, it was awesome to, hear Chadwick Boseman playing that iconic role of T'Challa for. I think I'm not sure if it's the last time or if it's the second to last time. I think there's some talk that he did some voice work for a later episode in this. So.
I think he will be back in at least one more episode.
Yeah, but either way, it's fantastic to hear him reprising this role because he just nails the role, and it's great to hear. And I thought it was entertaining. It had a little bit of a different, actually quite a few differences, I think, from the first episode of What If, which I liked because it feels like each of these episodes is getting like its own style that kind of fits with their movie. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy one, the narration by Watu the Watcher was a little bit more comical, I feel like, which fits with Guardians of the Galaxy as like their two movies. So I liked that and how they're kind of seeming to switch it up as it goes along. But yeah, overall, very positive thoughts from this episode.
What I thought was cool about this one is it showed that they're not just following a formula, right? Like episode one was what if Peggy became Captain Carter, and pretty much most of the events play out almost the same. We got the train heist, we got even the scene of her shooting, the same stuff. This starts the same way on Morag, but just goes completely different of what Guardians of the Galaxy ended up being. And I think that's good, and to set that this early so that way we're not like, I can't imagine if we gotten almost the exact same events, but just from a different perspective again. I feel like that would have been very strange. So I'm glad that they kind of set that course early here of, no, this one little thing in the first episode almost played out the same way, but just with some differences. And in this one, that one little change changed everything. Thanos is a good guy. right?
Yeah.
That's how kind of crazy we get on this track. And the big bad is the Collector, and it's kind of like roles reversed. So I kind of really enjoyed that as well, and we'll dig a little deeper into it here. I also really enjoyed some of the characters we got in this one. Nebula is so fun in this, and
For sure.
even like even a character like Taserface is fun in this, and seeing like Taserface again, I was not really expecting Taserface again, so that was a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and get into it. We get some really fun interchanges, like little changes here as well. But in 1988, this will be due to a flashback here. We actually open up on Morag. But in 1988, it shows that the Ravagers were sent to Earth to retrieve Peter Quill, but Yondu assigned the task to Kraglin and Taserface. To Kraglin and Taserface, so they accidentally abduct T'Challa instead of Peter Quill, and there you go. The one little change is that Yondu didn't do it himself, and as people say, if you want something done right, you do it yourself, right? So Yondu ends up with the wrong boy, and that changes the state of the galaxy here, as we see 20 years later. He's still called Star-Lord. That might be my only gripe with the episode, because Star-Lord was really a name that Peter's mom came up with him. So it is a little strange that T'Challa would go by Star-Lord. But he's getting the Power Stone just like Peter Quill did. But I will say I also like that instead of the red eyes, we get the purple eyes here from T'Challa's. So we still see some of that purple Wakandan colors, and he's still wearing like his Wakandan necklace. So we still get some really good stuff there. But yeah, he is called Star-Lord, and we get Korath the Pursuer, who is the guy who also stops Peter Quill's Star-Lord in the movie, and he says, he's Star-Lord. And we get the famous who, right? But in this, we do not. In this, we get him knowing exactly who Star-Lord is, and even bowing to him, which might, be a little callback to Hulk bowing, Bruce Banner bowing to him in Infinity War. But what were your thoughts here of this little reversal? Because this made me chuckle a bit.
I thought it was really good because it kind of sets up that the character of T'Challa as a Star-Lord, not like the Star-Lord, which is the only thing that kind of made me not gripe with that as much. The fact that he goes by not like the Star-Lord or something, but it's still, I get where you're coming from with that. But it's the exact opposite, like pretty much everything. And one little detail that I saw someone point out, I think on Twitter, was with that little magnetic thing that he uses to get the Power Stone out, T'Challa pushes them away, the guards away, whereas Peter Quill uses it to attract him in, which I think is a little nod to just how opposite they are, because T'Challa is royalty. He's very humble, he's noble, and all of that, and Peter is not so much that, a lot more maybe a little entitled at times, but a little less refined maybe. So it makes sense that it would change that much. And I also think the fact that the deeds that they've done, which is in kind of the next scene, kind of sets up why he's so much more well known by that name, because I liked the opposite part of it.
Yeah, and I think some people, yeah, some people will probably have problems with it. I saw some people complaining that T'Challa was able to turn Thanos around and stuff. But this is an alternate universe. It is what it is. But also, what's so different? The reason why I think they're so different is not just who they are, right? But it's the situation they were in when they were taken. T'Challa wanted to help people. He wanted to open up the borders, even as a kid. And he gets taken, so he's out there trying to help people. He wants to see the world, but he also wants to help. When Peter is taken, he's lost, right? He lost his mom. He has no idea who his father is. He has nobody. I mean, he has his grandparents, but, for him, he had lost his whole world. So he then gets taken, and he gets taken under the wing of Yondu, and he instead lets Yondu influence him, right? We see a lot of Peter in Yondu from the way that they react to, the way he becomes more of a Ravager, the way, Star-Lord, Peter does. But we instead see the opposite here, where T'Challa kind of rubs off on the Ravagers, and it's because he has that sort of, I think T'Challa already kind of knows who he is at that age when he gets taken, because he had a whole family. He didn't lose anybody. He had, he had strong beliefs, while Peter had lost everybody. He just kind of looked up to a father figure, but T'Challa didn't have to look up to Yondu as a father figure. I think is ultimately where the differences come from.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It makes perfect sense, because you're right. The only thing that Peter really has to go off of that he believes from Earth is his Walkman with the cassette tapes. And I also thought that was kind of cool, because a big part of why I love Guardians of the Galaxy is the music and everything. I like how they didn't use that as well, because if they had done that, that would have thrown it completely off. Yeah, even though it's what people are familiar with Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm glad they didn't lean on that, because I feel like it would be kind of tempting to do that, just because it's such an iconic part of that movie. I mean, that's what they base the entire premise of the ride at Disneyland on, really, about the music and everything. So I mean, I'm glad they didn't lean on that as sort of almost a crutch for trying to get through and communicate, oh yeah, this is Guardians of the Galaxy, but in an alternate universe. So I appreciated that as well.
Yes, and we'll see, one of my favorite parts does have music in it. But so T'Challa successfully had persuaded Thanos to abandon his plan of eliminating half of all life. He kind of, it's not really explained super well why, but it's almost like, he showed them that there's different ways of handling this. Korath joins the Ravagers since he's a big Star-Lord fan. So this is where we kind of still get some more divergent things here. And they're approached by Nebula, who, has her flowing blonde hair. And I think it was voiced by Karen Gillan, right? I don't think that it was.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's what she voices Nebula.
And let me just say, her charm comes through an animated character as well. She was still just, I love her as Nebula, but also this was a friendlier Nebula who has had, hasn't had the hard life the way that, she's still mostly person. She's still mostly a human.
Yeah.
Right? She's not, I think she still has a thing around her eye, or the bionic eye, but other than that, she is not as broken as she was. And I think Karen Gillan just plays Nebula so well that it really comes across well, even as an animated character.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is good, because sometimes, I've seen complaints about how some of the screen actors who are not typically voice actors have not been as good on the show. Like I said last week, people were giving Sebastian Stan a tough time, but he had, fish lines to work with, really. So this, Karen had a lot more to work with Nebula in this one. So what I liked about this too is it didn't just land on the Guardians thing. Like this really felt like a heist film. So it kind of had a mix of, an Ocean's 11 or something to it that felt very different to the MCU. I mean, like I think, they usually say Ant-Man 1 is a heist film, but I think it did kind of have that feel of Ant-Man. So I mean, that's right up your alley, right?
Yeah, exactly. I kind of noticed that I feel like that's why I like this one even more than the Captain Carter episode, just because it reminds me so much of Ant-Man, and plus like T'Challa is such a good character, and like I feel like just everything about this episode is right up my alley, pretty much.
And they released like a like Twitter poster, I think, for this, or an episode poster for this, and it looks really cool if people haven't seen it. It is a poster that has like Star-Lord's mask with the Wakandan necklace underneath, and then Watu coming out of the mask, like looking over. It just looks really great. But yeah, so that's kind of the setup there. They go to, Nebula proposes a heist to steal one of the Collector's artifacts, which is called the Embers of Genesis, which is a cosmic dust capable of terraforming ecosystems and eradicating galactic hunger. So this is right up Thanos' alley, right? Because his whole thing is how that stuff is, falling apart, and that this would help it. So the Embers of Genesis is specifically created for the show, it looks like. When I looked this up, the only thing on some of the... Oh, maybe not. Hold on. That was the MCU wiki. I'm trying to find just a regular wiki of it. Yeah, I don't think that this is... Yeah, this seems to be created for the show. I don't see that this is in anything else. So, pretty cool. If it isn't something, it's very obscure because I can't locate it just from a search here. But they accept the mission and they go ahead and meet the Collector and his... So this is where it's a little different too. We get the Black Order from Infinity War and Endgame, this time working for the Collector. And they're going to offer the Collector the orb and try to, I guess, find the Embers of Genesis instead. And kind of that's their heist plan. When T'Challa does get in, he finds Howard the Duck, played by Seth Green, and he, lets Howard the Duck out because Howard the Duck's telling him where to go. And Howard the Duck is going to be his guide through here. So it was very great to see Howard again here because he's in the Guardians films. We don't see him talk too much. This is probably his most lines, right? We had the end credit scene. You see him a little bit in the background of Guardians Volume 2. And then he is in Endgame. He comes through the portals and fights as well. But yeah, this was probably the most we've heard of Seth Green's Howard the Duck.
Yeah, I mean, all of the lines combined, though, I will say, are way better than the movie from the 80s. So that's definitely a plus. So,
I still haven't seen that one. I just know Leah Thompson is in it.
You're missing absolutely nothing. I'll let you know that. I'm not sure if it's even worth watching.
I've always wanted to buy it though, because I'll find it for like $5 on Blu-ray, but I have not been able to pull the trigger. It's funny that my parents know Howard the Duck from that movie.
That's how I knew him actually, from when I saw him in Guardians of the Galaxy, which I still regret seeing that movie. It is not
produced by Lucasfilm too.
It is, but it makes absolutely no sense at any point in time.
Yeah, it doesn't really adapt the comic, right? I mean,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it is, but who knows? He's not. He wasn't very Wasn't a very famous movie, I will say. It was a budget of 30 million and made about 38 in the box
Yep.
office.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I think like when you look at it, he looks kind of like just like a Donald Duck suit, you know, like
Yep.
it doesn't
Yeah.
look as good as this. But yeah, Howard the Duck's really great. So seeing him in this was fun. So Howard the Duck leads him, you know, tells him start pointing in the right direction. T'Challa's going to find a Wakandan spacecraft that was actually sent out in search for him. And we were told earlier in this episode that he was told by Yondu that Wakanda was destroyed, and that he finds out it wasn't, right? Like these spacecrafts have holograms of his father describing what he looks like, having pictures of him, all that kind of stuff. And then directly talking to T'Challa if he were to ever see this. So how do you think he knew he was taken in space? Do you think Wakanda just has better security, that they had like some sort of camera or like radar that's like, whoa, UFO just picked up your son?
Well, I think since the shield around Wakanda can pretty much sense when the technology enters and leaves, right? So because they have to for the ships to go in and out. And so I think, you know, we see him using the spear at the beginning and kind of throwing it, and it goes out of there. And so they're like, oh, it didn't come back in. And maybe they have to have cameras though at that point. So I don't think it's out of the question that they have something like that, because, you know, Wakanda is more advanced than every other civilization in the MCU. So, I mean, it would make sense for them to have it. I wouldn't doubt that they have some form of security at least. So I'm guessing that's what it is. It has to be.
That makes sense. I didn't really think about it that way, because I was like, how do they just know? You know, because like you think that we would have been able to tell as well, like that somebody took Peter Quill.
Yeah, or maybe it's like the necklace that he has like tracks him, but it only works on Earth or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, he went up like 220 miles into the air.
Like a Find My iPhone, and they're like,
yeah,
it says he's near Pluto. What is
this?
It says he's in
So
the Andromeda galaxy.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's supposed to take place, actually. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy films take place in the Andromeda galaxy.
Yeah, but I think that makes the most sense, because that's the only logical explanation. And like, you know, it would be tough for them to track space because they don't know like where exactly he would have gone. And I'm guessing that they haven't calibrated their tracking systems to work in space or anything. So that's probably the best explanation I could think of. I would be interested to hear what the directors have to say about that, because it is a little strange, like how they would exactly know, but somehow they did.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, let's not keep going down that road, I guess. So Nebula is going to seemingly betray the Ravagers and, you know, lead the Collector to them. And T'Challa, you know, does not like the fact that they are imprisoning others in his collection, which actually kind of gets Karina thinking. That's the assistant. She's the assistant in the first Guardians film, and she, you know, has kind of had the same sort of plot line before as well. You know, she in Guardians 1, she doesn't like rebel, right? But she definitely,
I believe she tries to take the Power Stone. Because
she gets killed,
when the Collector's talking about it, and then she dies because she can't wield the Infinity Stone.
Yeah,
so
and she's probably trying to take it because she's probably tired of being
probably
in captivity.
Yeah.
So the Collector is going to say that he's going to sentence T'Challa to death, but Karina is going to shoot Ebony Maw to free T'Challa. So then Corvus Glaive is, going after the rest of the Ravagers. Nebula shoots him, and that she reveals that this was a triple cross, right? In order for her to get the Embers, which I thought was a fun twist because I was actually really upset with Nebula when she betrayed them originally. So I'm very glad that she was that this was all a plan here. And she gets to team up with her dad. She gets to team up with Thanos and defeat Call Obsidian and Proxima Midnight. And T'Challa and Yondu are going to team up and face off against the Collector. And we get some really weird fight here with the Collector where he's even going to get he's going to grab the Hela's headdress, I guess is what you would call it. And so that was fun, right? We get to see him do that. We even see on his wall that he has a Captain America shield.
And Mjolnir, actually.
Yes, he does have Mjolnir too.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the one that he first hits T'Challa with, rest in peace to Korg. Obviously, because he uses Korg's arm to punch T'Challa in the face as he's trying to run away. So, unfortunately, everyone's favorite character is no longer with us in this universe. But yeah, that was a moment that I at first when I saw it, I was like, wait a second, is that? And then I was like, yeah, that's definitely Korg. So
the most obscure weapon though is he grabs the Collector grabs the blade or dagger of Malekith.
Right, yeah.
From Thor the Dark World. So like everybody's favorite Thor movie.
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
And man, let me just say, this Collector for some reason decided he needed a Planet Fitness subscription or something, because
for sure
he is buff. He is built
for sure. I guess because he wasn't. I wonder if it's because he had filled like this power vacuum, so he's like, I need to like show power or whatever. So let me just do like 1,000 push-ups every day or something like that, and 1,000 sit-ups. He's doing something. I want to know what routine gets you that, because that's pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that was I need to know his workout regimen, because if Benicio del Toro was to look that built, that would be that'd be pretty crazy. But yeah, so we get we get the some the little battle there with some cool little things. But we also end up with them defeating the Collector. Karina is going to actually free the rest of the captives, and it kind of lets the captives go after the Collector, which, as the Screen Rant website here actually points out, that is very similar to the Collector's brother, the Grand Master from Ragnarok, who has all of his people from his planet go after him, the Sakaar, right?
Sakaar,
yeah. So the Sakarians going after the Grand Master. We kind of get the same thing with the captives going after Tivian here. So just a little mirror, like a pretty cool little mirror here. Okay, let me see. I have too many tabs open trying to find my notes. Okay, so they return to Earth. The Ravagers do. And, T'Challa actually gets to reunite with his mother, his father, and his sister. And then we get where Peter Quill actually is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is at the Dairy Queen that we see in Guardians Volume 2, working as a janitor, listening to his music, when he's approached by none other than Kurt Russell, Ego, the Living Planet, approaching him. and his eyes go white, and it cuts off like right there, which is unfortunate. So I want to ask you, do you think we see this go somewhere, either in this season or another season?
I would like to see it go somewhere because I think it's an interesting story that could be pursued. But I have a feeling that it's not going to go anywhere because my guess is that, you know, the whole thing with Ego, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I've only watched Guardians Volume 2 like twice, I think, but Ego ends up killing like all of his offspring for the most part, right? So, I mean, I have a feeling that that's what happens to Peter Quill in this case, but could be wrong with that.
Yeah, I hope he didn't just kill him right then. Yeah, I was hoping,
Yeah.
you know, maybe he, you know, pulls the, you know, does the whole carpet out for him type of thing, you know, get everything going on. But yeah, I liked, this was one of my favorite parts, even though this was a little end here. I really liked the song choice they used for Peter Quill, and just that's where it really felt Guardians, right? As you get the music going, you see Peter Quill with his headset on, but unfortunately it looks like he's about to either die or you know, face off against his father there. And he has no clue. He has not been into space. He has no idea what any of this stuff is. So that is very interesting on how I guess he lived with his grandfather the whole time. When he ran out, you know, after his mother's passing, he probably just was on the hill of the field crying, and then eventually his grandfather finds him, where he goes back in and collects himself. But, you know, so it's completely a different set of circumstances for Peter, and he's probably a whole different person, you know, like the way he acts. So I would really like to see this expanded on if this were to happen, you know, because it kind of felt like a cliffhanger. We didn't really need to see Ego go after Peter Quill, I guess, unless if they're thinking, since, you know, the original goal was to get Peter, we have to show you what happened to him, I guess. But it is something I thought that was a little strange to wrap up this episode when it was such a story focus on T'Challa to see this. So it kind of felt like a cliffhanger a bit. Not that we'll see it next week. I doubt, I doubt it has any connection there. Let's see. So some cool little things that people have been picking up on is that instead of the Milano, they are flying in the Mandela, named after Nelson Mandela, which is cool because he's a South African civil rights, you know, pioneer and former president. And, you know, Wakanda takes place in Africa. So, of course, T'Challa would probably know about Nelson Mandela. Though, when did he get...
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that was more during the 90s and everything, but I could be mistaken with that. But
he was president in the 90s. When was he? He served in prison until 1990, and he gets taken in 88. So he either learned of him afterwards, or he was, you know, just a big deal about him being in prison.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe the whole thing, because we see a very different T'Challa in this than we do in Black Panther, where he already wants to help people outside of the borders of Wakanda. Mm-hmm. So maybe he's hearing about this, right? And that's kind of what kicks him on to wanting to help other people outside. Maybe that's the kind of thing that spurs on the whole conversation with his father, that leads to him running away. And that could be sort of the thing. That would be my best guess as to what it is. But I think that's also a really cool detail, and it shows how much T'Chaka, right, influences T'Challa in leading up to Black Panther. So I think that's a really cool detail that we see. Like it actually makes the ending to Black Panther make a lot more sense as well, I feel like, because we kind of get this idea that T'Challa had these values all along, and they were just obscured. So it seems like less of a complete turnaround, maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of just going off on a limb there, but it's kind of a cool detail.
It could just be a continuity error, right?
Could be.
But also they could say, what if, okay, Mandela got released a few years early, right?
Yeah.
they could really do anything.
It's an alternate universe.
It's alternate universe. So they do mention Skrulls in here. Yondu jokes that it never hurts to hurt a Skrull. People laugh at that. We get Drax as a bartender here, where he is not depressed, right? He still has his children and his family, because it seems to be that Star-Lord, he says, saved Drax's planet from a Kree invasion, and that is usually when Ronan would have came and slaughtered Drax's family. So nice little thing there that, Drax is happy. He's living his best life.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So she didn't have to fight, Nebula didn't have to fight as much because Gamora as much because of because Thanos is reformed, right? So she's able to grow out her hair. She's able to be kind of like a normal person, as we talked about there. We get Cosmo the dog again as well, which is a great reference to the comics as well. And he was in Guardians Volume 1 and maybe Volume 2.
Yeah, I think so. But one thing that I was just thinking of with because you mentioned Gamora, we don't see her in this one. So I wonder if there's a later What If episode, I believe, that has Gamora be like Thanos. So I wonder if that ties into like this same sort of universe, and that could be like where we start to see the continuities between these alternate universes maybe pop up. So that could be kind of interesting because
we know this one doesn't take place in this first episode's universe because it does have the Captain America shield. Mm-hmm. So we know that this one's not connected. But you're right. Eventually they will get connected. I don't know if Gamora is from this same universe because we didn't see her. So she could be. She could have not liked that her dad went straight, I guess. And she could have, took up his weapon, that big, massive sword. Thing, and be going around. Because she will have that, as we were looking at in the, last week.
Yeah. I mean, one other thing I wanted to ask you relating to the weapons that the Collector has. So, there's two parts to this. One, do you think Captain America and Thor, and subsequently potentially the other Avengers, are dead in this universe? Like maybe this is sort of the universe where we see in Age of Ultron, Tony Stark is getting all these visions of all of those nightmarish visions of all of them dying, and there's the giant, I can't remember what they're called, the giant monster thing that flies through in the Avengers movie. Is that maybe a reality in this one? And then
the Leviathans.
The Leviathans, right? That's what it is. So is that part of it? And then the second part is, how did the Collector pick up Mjolnir? Like, is he worthy? And if so, how? That's
a good question. It's a good question. Maybe he just had Thor put it there, right? He's like, I can't lift it. Or maybe his assistant is worthy, right?
Potentially, yeah.
I'm guessing he could get somebody to put it in there for him that is worthy. But yeah, it's a good question if they're alive or dead. I would think that it could go either way, really. It could be that he beat them and took these. It's like Cap has had more than the one shield, right? So, like the one he gives Sam is a different one as well. So it could be he got a new one at some point. But yeah, Mjolnir, I'm not really sure on how that would work. Maybe Thor still lost it somehow and he's going to use Stormbreaker. He gets Stormbreaker still. It's a good question though. I don't know if I would say it'd be like any sort of the thoughts or, like the visions that Tony had, because I think that this goes off in such a weird tangent after they pick up T'Challa instead of Star-Lord. We really have no idea on what the rest of the state, because look, so T'Chaka doesn't die. So
Right.
The Winter Soldier never killed T'Chaka. We don't know if there is a Winter Soldier. We don't know what role, maybe that Cap shield is from when he fell into the ice,
Maybe.
and never got unthawed or something. But yeah, we don't really know how any of this world took place. So it isn't. Now what they kind of allude to, right, every time is that everything went the same until that moment, right? So, but with him being taken in 88, like Cap still wouldn't have been found yet.
Howard Stark would still be alive.
Right.
Like,
so we don't know what happened after that, because maybe Wakanda opened up a bit after they were looking for T'Challa. Maybe they're like, we need to, search far and wide. We got to open it up or whatever. But yeah, and then what that means is maybe then Howard gets his hands on vibranium or something that can help power an Iron Man suit the same way the Tesseract did last week, and it creates a whole, like, maybe he's Iron Man. Like this stuff can just change so crazy. But that is good. It's cool just to throw that stuff in there, because it shows like there's a history there and that something happened, but it doesn't matter what, right? Like you're like, oh, that's cool. He either beat them or he got these weapons off of them, and he's the collector. He's collecting it.
Cool.
It's
there's so many things. And one other thing just to ponder, because I was thinking about it, since there's no Thanos, like as we know him, as kind of like the evil guy, maybe there's no Loki being ordered to go to Earth
Attack
and open
New
the
York,
portal, and there's no Avengers maybe being assembled. There's none of that. The events of that get set in motion, really. So it's very possible that like all of this is just completely stagnant. Maybe there's no superheroes really on Earth. I mean, it's completely possible at that point because of how much has changed. So
yeah, because there's no need for them, right? Because their whole reasoning was, okay, we know aliens are here, we got to prepare. And like you said, Thanos sends Loki there, so then Tony's like, oh, I got to make Ultron. So we probably don't have Ultron, right? Because which means we don't have Vision. So that does. We don't have Wanda because Hydra uses Loki's scepter to experiment on her and kick open her abilities. So this whole thing is like, if we had any, we have Iron Man, maybe, and he was still created just because of his weapons dealings. So like he could still be around.
And remember, we don't even know if like, the Winter Soldier is still like out there. So Howard Stark could be still alive. So there could have been no Obadiah Stane. Therefore, like no Iron Man really. So I mean, like it's just it's so fun to think about all of these possibilities. And I mean, it shows that the title "What If" goes so far beyond just the one little story they show you, because each of these you can just easily think further and further into all of these different scenarios. Like, what does it mean for this? And you could come up with an answer about it. I mean, I think the only continuity of like a superhero existing would be Ant-Man. I think that's it, because he's around during the 80s. So
but it'd be Hank, right? Like it would be Hank. Yeah, we don't know if he would still have tried to pass it on to Scott, because maybe he doesn't have a falling out with Tony's dad, Howard. So I mean, again, it all goes back to the Starks. It all goes back to all of that. So so it's interesting, definitely interesting. You would probably have Thor, unless if he just got killed and Mjolnir is there. Yeah. And you'd have Cap, unless if he's still in the ice or he got killed. So you might just have Star-Lord.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
And his little ragtag guardians, Ravagers. But yeah, so that is most of everything in this episode, right? Did you have any other thoughts or anything you noticed in this show?
I mean, I also want to give one last notice to the very end of it, like very end, because they have a nice little tribute to Chadwick Boseman, which is awesome to see, because he definitely was gone too soon, and I think I'm just happy that we get to see him in one form or another playing T'Challa. That's my favorite part about this. Like, yes, it's fun with all of the theorizing and everything, but it feels like a massive tribute to him, his character, and just who he was as a person. So I absolutely adore that. Chadwick Boseman, incredible actor, really. So I'm just super happy with that.
Yeah, and can I just say, this is like probably the best cast we're going to get out of these episodes, I think, because this one had the most people so far from the movies into it. Listen to this. You have Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Michael Rooker is back as Yondu, Djimon Hansu, who plays Korath, is back. John Canny as T'Chaka. Josh Brolin voiced Thanos. Benicio del Toro came back to voice the Collector. Kurt Russell even came for that one line or two. For Ego. Sean Gunn came back for Kraglin. Chris Sullivan as Taserface. He played Taserface in Volume 2. Seth Green as Howard the Duck. We have Denai Guerrilla, who from playing Okoye. Ophelia Lovabond, who played Karina. She also played him in the movies. Carrie Coon as Proxima Midnight. That's who played her in the movie. Tom Von Lawler as Ebony Maw. I think the rest are actually all other voice actors.
Yeah. The only two I think that really stood out were Star-Lord, but he has one line. I think it's just, "Can I help you?" I think that's all he says so it's not that noticeable. But then Drax as well.
You don't pay Chris Pratt for that one line.
Yeah, and then Drax as well. But I saw there was a little bit of a thing popping up on Twitter where someone was like, "Hey, Dave Bautista, why aren't you voicing Drax in What If?" And he's like, "Well, I was never asked." And then James Gunn was like, "What?" So it was. So I don't know what happened there, but maybe a bit of a miscommunication with the scheduling from Marvel on that part. Who knows with that? But that was the only noticeable one, I think, in terms of like the different voices.
Yeah, that was you know what though? I thought he actually did a good job as Drax.
He did a good job.
I got to give props here to this was Fred Tatasciore. He voiced Drax and Corvus. But he actually did a very good job as Drax, because I was going in knowing that from the Twitter exchanges, and I was like, this actually sounds pretty good. And I can understand why they wouldn't ask Dave Bautista, because again, this is like 3 lines. Drax didn't have like any big lines, and I'm sure he would command quite a fee.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So why they didn't ask him is probably because they already knew the answer, right? Like these are 3 lines we can just have somebody else say, and nobody's going to notice. Like, not a lot of people are going to be like, that's not Dave Bautista, And the thing is too, it's a whole different Drax, so you don't even need Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
Like this is not a Drax that Dave has played. This, like, he plays, a Drax that is not usually happy and has been depressed, and this is a Drax that is not lost his family, so it is a little bit different. But yeah, so I'm really excited. Next week, we don't know what the episode is, but from what I've read from press stuff, it is some sort of Avengers whodunit or murder mystery is what I'd seen people say before, which sounds cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's supposed to take place in, or if it's supposed to take place around like Avengers 2012. Like that, I've not looked up. I'm sure if you really want to, you could probably find somebody who spilled the beans there on it. But yeah, so thanks, Jack, for jumping back on here. Where can people find any of your work?
Yeah, well, at jcprasad16 is my Twitter handle if you want to check me out on there. I also do a podcast on soccer with my friend AJ, which is at Final Third Show. If that's your cup of tea, head on over to that. We'd greatly appreciate any listens on there. And otherwise that's about it. I don't have anything else to plug there, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on. And would you like to come back for episode 3? You want to just do the whole show?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I love this show. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll have you back for the rest of the run here. And thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to follow the show, you can follow us on Twitter at TO Infinity Saga, Facebook.com/Infinity Saga Beyond, or email us marvelplusrecaps@gmail.com. And we will catch you all next week.